Look at you with the longer hair.
I know, it is growing. Do you notice that?
I did.
I'm trying to grow it.
You are growing it.
I am growing it. My Bubba always tells me, though, when I cut it, oh, it'll grow back. And I'm like, no, Bubba, I like it long.
You like it?
She says, no, but it'll grow back. She likes it long. Anyway.
She likes it.
Yeah.
She has her preference.
Yes, and lets me know.
Bubba. You gotta love it.
Yeah. Okay, so what's good in your heart? I always start with you. Because I give
First
you
of all,
time to think.
I told you I was gonna tell you the story. Christina just went to my bathroom.
I did. Oh, yeah. And I saw...
Oh, no, you went to the back to get a glass.
Yeah, glass.
Because show them your special glass.
Yeah.
This is Christina.
I have a special glass because...
Every time she comes here.
It's my Olivia Pope glass.
Yes, it is. And it says the struggle is real.
Yes, which is very true.
The struggle is real.
Yes. So this is a very me glass. Thank you very much.
Shout out to my mom for always leaving glasses.
We are very similar, your mom and I. So
anyway.
In our taste, and your daughter. Yeah.
So on the backboard.
Yeah, I saw a limited amount of flushes for Zahara, and if she goes over 3, she has to clean a toilet.
Yes. So my daughter does not like to clean, does not like to flush. It's not that she doesn't like to. My son drafted the bathroom. We had a chore draft a while ago, so that was that.
Yeah.
And so he was like, look, at Sunday meeting, she's not flushing the toilet. And if she's not flushing the toilet, she should have to clean it.
That's fair.
I said so too. I was like, that's fair. So they keep track. On the board, if she doesn't flush, he tells her.
That is so
And she has to ticket. And if she doesn't flush 3 times in a week, then she's responsible for the cleanliness of the toilet.
That's awesome. How's it going so far?
She's had to clean it. Sorry. She had to clean it the week before last. But this week she didn't. She almost did. She had 2 like non-flushes or whatever. So that was a big deal at the
That's
meeting.
really funny.
My son was like, Zahara didn't have to clean the toilet. I was like,
okay.
Whatever. And that's every week. So that'll always be in my what's good. Family meetings are going great.
That's true. I feel like you do talk about your family.
They're going great.
Something funny.
Because I feel like I do believe I want to go back and get my master's in agile project management, and I really need to get it together. But I believe that working that in your home is like, it helps if we're always coming back to the table and seeing what worked, what didn't work every week. Then we
with
can
managing
kind of adjust.
The house?
Yeah, with managing the whole house and responsibilities.
The kids stay to it well.
Oh yeah, because they plan their week.
Yeah.
And then it's like I can look at, am I giving them too much to do? Am I putting too much of myself to do? Like every week I can assess, and then I can ask for support. It helps me.
Yeah, because I feel
not
like
feel
a lot
crazy.
I feel like a lot of women get stuck doing more
and then do nothing.
And then Oh, I know. That's me, and I don't have kids, so. Like, I wait till my laundry's as tall as me. Or I do, Clayton and I, we always say when we have kids, it's going to be better. We have to do better, because we enable each other. So we'll, like, wait till the house is, like, super messy. Or someone's coming over, and then we'd have to, like, do a whole thing over. Like, we're not, like, those people that put everything away as we go. Yeah. It's kind of like, it gets bad. It's like once a week. It gets bad, then Sunday comes around, and we're like, we can't live in this mess anymore.
Yeah.
Or we do laundry and then dry it and leave it all in the dryer.
Shut it. And so, but this is the thing in the house is now you get to see when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
People can see how it influences other people getting their work done.
Yeah.
So my son has laundry day.
Yeah.
And when he doesn't do it, when he does it or leaves it in the dryer, then that prevents somebody else from doing.
Right. Same. Like if I do all my clothes and then it's left in the dryer. That just happened. We came home and went to do all our laundry from the trip. And we're like, oh shit, the laundry, it's full. The dryer's full. So we have it's bad. But we do it together. So, but we always laugh. I'm like, we're going to have to get it together before we.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all good. It's all good. But but what's good in my hood, Thanksgiving was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Had lots of family friends over. Played board games. So we do game nights. Yeah. And I get burnt out on games. Like, they come over and they want to play these games over and over.
The same ones. Yeah.
But it was a good time. Like, they played Clue. Have you played Clue?
No.
C-O-U-P, Clue.
Okay.
You played Clue. Remember, I was like, you'll get it.
Was it the Spies?
Not Shifty Eye Spies, but they played that too.
Okay.
But they played those games, and I think everybody had a grand old time.
Yeah, that's fun.
Grand old time, and I feel, we went hiking. We went trail walking.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love hiking.
5-mile trail we went.
That's long. I don't know if I can do that.
I know.
How do your kids do on that?
They did all right until Zara. Everybody packed their own bag and stuff. And then Zara's bag, she packed water crackers, like water table crackers in a water bottle. And she was like, at about mile 3, she was like, you know, I'm going to need a dock. I need a dock. We're going to have to dock. You know, a dock I can go out and sit on because I need a break.
In the middle of the woods?
In the woods. But it had a lake in between.
Oh, gotcha.
With a trail around it. But yeah, so I think once they set down, which is about mile 3.5, maybe 4, your body's like, oh shit, like let's.
I know. Once you sit, it's almost, you almost have to keep going.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's good. I can't do hikes more than a mile. I get bored.
Girl, it was, but they got to go through the woods and stuff. My son got lost.
Oh, by himself?
I had to go out. Yeah, because we were letting him, as long as he connected back to the trail.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But he didn't. The trail didn't connect back. He was like, I heard him go, Dad.
Oh.
I was like, oh, he's scared. I'm just gonna let him.
Well, that would be scary.
Okay, life lesson.
Yeah. But you got him.
Yeah, we got him. Good week.
Yeah.
Not very like life productive, but
sometimes that is so good.
Social productive.
That is so good. I think that's what's good in my head is we just took a lot of time together. You know what I mean? Just like I took naps. We played games, which I love because we don't do a lot. So like when I don't know, I don't see my family often, so it's just nice to, you know what I mean? Like just catch up with everybody and spend quality time.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate that because I feel like the older I get, the more I appreciate my grandma and my mom and my dad and my brother because I just get so busy in life. I don't also make enough time to call them. Yeah. So I feel like the holidays do make me slow down, and that is very hard for me to do. I don't do well slowing down. You know, I don't like to. I'm like, I gotta be productive. I gotta do this, and it was kind of like nice to turn my brain off. You know? We did get stuck coming home in 12-hour traffic, and it's like an 8-hour drive home.
Oh my goodness!
Just coming.
No snow. You didn't get
no snow. We wanted snow, but the locals were like, "No, we don't want snow." Clayton was like, "Come on, where's my snow?" I'm like, "Don't say that to the locals. Like, just don't. Because they don't."
That's like, because he's from Texas.
Yeah, exactly. He gets so it snows here a little bit, but not like. He wants to see the snow when he goes, you know, and I'm like, no, the locals don't want it. Like it's gonna be sick. I will admit my blood is thinner. That's probably not a thing. But when I got home, it was like 26 degrees, and I was like, freezing. Oh my god! I was like, how did I ever live here? And I needed like all my coats. I could barely find them. I'm like packing all because here you don't really need it right now. You don't need.
See, I got this light jacket.
Yeah, you need light jackets. You don't need like heavy coat. And I'm a runner. I went running in it, and I like couldn't breathe. I was like, oh my god, I'm out of shape. But it was just cold. It's just cold.
You still went running.
I did go running.
Fine.
I know. I did. Yeah, I ran like 3 or 4 times.
I love you.
Yeah, because
commitment. Look at her.
Oh yeah. Well, if I'm gonna eat. I'm not saying you have to run to eat, but I'm just saying like I love to eat on Thanksgiving more than I normally would, and so I run to offset some of it.
Favorite dish?
Favorite mac and cheese.
Oh,
but I'm lactose intolerant, so this is really funny. So that's my so that's my favorite dish, and everyone in my family, it makes me really sick, and everyone in my family. So the dish is getting passed around. Bubba intercepts it before it comes to me and hides it. Swear to God.
Because they're like, they don't want to smell your face.
Yeah! No, seriously, I wasn't going to say it, but they're like, because for years, it makes me so sick, and I'll eat it. I'll just eat it because I have no control over it.
I got to connect you with my friend Harmony, who makes vegan mac and cheese. Oh,
I need some. Because that is my favorite food.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to give up. I know. Well, it's hard to give up.
It's my favorite food.
It is. And my family hides it from me.
So you didn't get any?
No.
I'm sorry.
I know, thanks. But my stomach didn't hurt, so.
Because they ain't gonna be blowing up our bathroom this holiday.
No, seriously, it's terrible. And it's like, my family knows because since I was little, I've always been like that.
Yeah.
And I'm a glutton for punishment, so.
Here comes the male person. Oh. See the male person.
What's your favorite dish? You got one?
This year, I love mac and cheese, but the person who was supposed to bring mac and cheese didn't bring the mac and cheese. So we all were pissed off.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. I didn't eat much. I'm going to be quite honest.
Really?
Not eat much. My friend made some amazing chocolate cake.
Ooh, that sounds so good.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good that it was gone, and I meant to steal some before
You had to save at least a piece.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
For like,
you didn't have any?
I didn't have a piece, and I meant to cut a chunk and put it in.
You can have it later. That's my favorite. I love second and third dinner.
But I sure did. I used that turkey to rip up some ramen, girl. I did.
Do you still have the turkey?
I have a little bit left.
Yeah.
I made the turkey. I made the turkey.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, the kids were so excited. Anyway,
It's a good what's good in the hood.
So the kids, speaking of, we had this amazing podcast.
Oh, yeah.
With a sociologist.
Oh, yeah. The Curly Professor.
Curly Professor Brittany Friedman.
Yes.
I hope I said your name right. Brittany.
Yes. We were so honored to have her. I think she reached out. She does very similar work, study, but she's we're professional, so she's smart. She's got her doctorate. She's a smart woman. The woman is very smart. Yeah, she's very smart.
The woman is very smart and cool.
Yeah, and so easy to talk to and fun. So what do we talk about? Gosh, so just so you guys know, there's 2 episodes because her work is so in depth that we were like, we had to do it.
We had to do it twice.
Yeah.
We had, like, after the first time we sat down with her, we were like, this is an incomplete conversation. We have to do this again.
Yeah.
So we did.
So the first part, well, the name of the episode is Colonized Minds.
Right.
What did you came up with the title?
Yeah. Teaching racism. I'll look. You can tell that we are crazy busy ladies, right?
Yep. Always have things on our minds. It was Colonized Minds, teaching racism. Something about teaching racism.
Teaching of racism over time.
Yes. So we talked. Yeah. So that was a great conversation because she really talked about. Well, we started young.
Yeah.
We started talking about how we can teach we aren't born racist or we aren't born in hate. What that looks like from young age.
Yeah. She talks about everything from what it looked like back in the early days to what it looks like in the prison system. Vaguely kind of touched on that. Can't remember what it was. I can't remember. I'll edit this out. But she talked about what it meant to her family.
Yeah. Yeah, what is her...
And why she even got into sociology.
Yeah, and that's... Because that always drives me. She studies very specific things, so I was always interested what brought people there, what their backstory was that brought her. What's her descent? I forget.
She's straight up African American with some Creole in there. But what I love about Brittany is that, one, she sounds like a normal person.
Yeah.
But she's extremely academic.
Yep.
She's actually an associate professor at Rutgers.
Yeah.
Starting in January. Yeah. Which is a beautiful thing. I think you'll hear her talk about that in part 2.
Right.
But she's like done the work.
Yeah.
And when you meet people that do the work and can explain it to you and give you an understanding
in a way.
Yeah, in like a normal human way. Like
it wasn't too academic, which isn't bad, but it's just it was easy to have a conversation with her.
I think that's a skill.
Yeah, it is.
As a professor, I think that's
a skill.
Make it
relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she's super cool. So she's on Instagram if you want to ask her some questions.
At
the Curly Professor.
Yes.
And just tune in. Like, this was awesome.
Yeah. I learned a lot.
You ask a lot of great questions,
Thank you.
I think just diving deeper into...
I think because that's all I have coming from it is questions. You know? I mean, you could do your own research, but I think a lot of this, there's just so much to unpack.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much to unpack with racism, what causes it, where it comes from, how our minds are colonized, you know, how we're all put into a system to think about race, and that's what she touches on. And then she also brings it home into real life examples.
Yeah, real life examples. I feel like I understand history just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brittany.
You're always learning more history, so.
Yeah. So tune in.
Yeah.
Get you some with the Curly Professor.
Yeah.
Part 1.
Part 1. And then, so don't worry, if you're a little overwhelmed, there's a part 2. Take your time with the episode.
Yeah, and take this episode in doses.
Yeah.
I think
I mean, I always feel like that. If it's, how long is it? Probably about
This one's about an hour.
Yeah, so I do that. I break them up into 30-minute chunks. Like if I know I have a 30-minute drive, I listen.
Listen in and...
Yeah, break it up.
Yeah, I learned so much.
Absolutely.
So here we go. Who the heck are you?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, who am I? So, you know, the other day someone asked me that and I said, well, I have a PhD in obvious, but I was just kidding. So I guess, you know, I would say I try to be a professor. I try to profess sociology is essentially, I guess, what that means. By day, by night, I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I still try to be a hot wife, but you know.
Yeah, girl. That's good. Yeah.
We're trying. Yeah. Trying. I think I'm succeeding on the motherhood part, but the others I'm trying. And so, yeah, most of the time I spend my day writing, researching and reading. So I'm also essentially a bookworm. That's what I'm doing most of the time. But I do love to read, so that's fun. Hence all the books behind me.
That's your office for now.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
what are you into right now? Tell us where you are and why you are where you are.
Yeah.
So I am finishing up my PhD at Northwestern.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I will be defending October 19th. I already turned in the draft. So it's like, okay, it's real. It's happening. And then in January, I will be an assistant professor of sociology and criminal justice at Rutgers in New Jersey. So yeah, right now I'm just like, my head is in my dissertation. My dissertation is about the historical persecution of Black political activists behind bars in California. And then I also look at how this persecution translated on the ground level. So that essentially means, how did Black activists experience abuse in their day-to-day interactions with other prisoners and with correctional officers? What did this mean for them? How did this further politicize them? It radicalized many of them, as you would think, because they were already involved in politics, social movements, and they're essentially being targeted for that. And they have the skills and resources to organize on their own behalf, and that's what happens. So that's what I'm doing, and it's a lot of drama behind bars.
That's a fun way to put it.
Yeah.
You're like, when I hear drama, I'm thinking, oh, so it's like the Real Housewives behind bars.
No, my drama is like doing interviews with people who've served, most of their lives in prison, like 30, 40 years, telling me in detail about gladiator fights that correctional officers will set up, about battles between various organizations like the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia. I mean, it's very deep stuff.
I'm gonna say this. First, you're like validating Orange is the New Black.
I know, I just binge watched that whole season.
That's the little stuff you're saying. I'm like, oh, geez.
No, it's real, and it's actually, because that's made for TV, right? And if some of the stuff that I have in the book, I don't even think you could put that on TV. It would have to be like rated MA because of how graphic some of these experiences that people have lived through. And then when they are coming out on the outside, there's, as we know, there's no support systems. People believe, well, you went to prison, so you should, deal with it. And then essentially we don't realize that a huge proportion of our society has been institutionalized and has to find a way to re-enter essentially on their own and just start over.
Wow.
Let's tell that story.
Yeah.
Let's tell that story because, again, this is a professor that we're talking to. A lot of the folks that listen either have parents or grandparents that grew up in, we're going to say, the 40s, 50s era. So let's talk about, what does it mean to be a Black person in the 40s and 50s based off of your research?
So based off my research, what it means is that, as you know, you're still property. In so many words, you're still property of the state, and you are still, I like this metaphor that I heard recently. At this time, Black people are sort of we're the embodiment of nothingness. Like, we're just sort of like an empty space in comparison to whiteness. And like, we have to exist, if you will, because whiteness needs a counter in order to validate its superiority. But essentially we mean nothing. And in this time period, it's very evident in the various abuses that you see on the outside in society. And we can think of, the civil rights movement. We're thinking of, people being sicked on with dogs, the bombing in Alabama. But then behind bars, what I see is that this is magnified on a much greater level, because prisons are designed to be coercive. They're designed to control. They're designed to dehumanize. And that's already African Americans at this time, and arguably still today, are not completely viewed as full human beings, deserving of equal rights. And so what you see is that correctional officers are bringing with them what I would call their pre-existing racist ideals, but then behind bars, it's almost like the Stanford prison experiment times two. It's like having that power and that control to be able to enforce your will makes the conditions for African Americans that much worse than in comparison to other prisoners who are experiencing abuse. Because at this time, you do see white prisoners are experiencing abuse, as are Latin prisoners, as are prisoners of Asian descent, but it's not on the same level as African Americans. In California at this time, African Americans are actually kept separate from everyone else, almost to prove a point that like you are on the bottom. And there's various lawsuits against California in the 40s, 50s, and 60s where prisoners are saying this goes against, well, eventually when you have Brown versus Board of Education against segregation, they're using that to argue that, well, you can't have segregation in prisons. But what the courts are saying is actually prisons have the right to protect the institutional welfare, and they can do that by any means necessary. And if they think that we need to segregate you to do that, then they have the right to do that.
Wow. So how does one even get to prison? How do we even get to prison?
Oh my goodness. Well, so are you talking about this time period that I'm looking at? In this early era, what you really see is, I would say, a backlash to the Great Migration. So, following World War I, you see a huge, even following the Civil War, you see a huge migration of African Americans from the South trying to escape essentially racial terror that's happening during Reconstruction. And you see it again after World War I, and you see it again after World War II. And I would say a lot of it, I think it's characteristic of a backlash to this increased Black presence. Some sociologists like to call it racial threat. And it's essentially where minorities, when our population size increases, whites take notice and they become fearful of their own political or economic power. And I think that's what happens during this era. And the theory also argues, which I don't think it's a theory, I think it's a theory but based on facts, is that what ends up happening is that the state begins to rely even more heavily on coercive apparatuses like the criminal justice system to control this increasing population. It's nasty stuff. I see your face. It's nasty.
It is, because for me, especially as a white person, this is so weird to wrap your head around. You know what I mean? Because white privilege allows us to just not have to think about it. You know what I mean? So for me, this is such a world that to you guys, this is not crazy. But to me, I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, this is, I know what white supremacy is and I get it and it's in play. You know what I mean? I think I'm constantly learning and peeling back the layers of what it is. But hearing what you're saying, I mean, that's so crazy to me. It's a world I can't even wrap my head around. So,
and two, listen to what you're saying, and what I would say is like part of that, like part of, I guess, the homework in the layperson's
right.
Our minds is getting closer to things like COINTELPRO. But that meant being a Black person, that, because you said it's about social, what did you say, political and economic strength, right, power, about how the FBI and the police forces were weaponized in a sense, not even in a sense, but really weaponized to put Black skin in prison.
Exactly. I mean, there is a really great quote. I should have pulled it up. It's a former official in the Nixon administration, and he did an interview, and it's in a mainstream media magazine, where he basically admitted that the entire war on drugs was like a fabrication. It was like a political tool because they wanted to find a way to incarcerate hippies. And it's basically like African Americans and the Black left. And that's because because during that era, right before the war on drugs, you have the Black Panthers, you have various, and also just left-wing groups, the student movements against Vietnam, and what the state ended up doing and admitting to doing later on, as we know, is needing to find a way to vilify them and criminalize them. And the best way you do that is you appeal to people's fears. So I think when people hear, even when you hear things in the media about like, oh, how dangerous this is, and we can talk about marijuana, for instance. This is what they did with the hippies. They said, you know, marijuana is the gateway drug. It's going to make you go crazy. You're going to lose your mind and all this. Like, look at those dangerous hippies. And people are like, yeah, lock them up. And, you know, and like, what is it, like 40 years later, we're all like, everyone's joking about medicinal marijuana. And it's like, see, it's really all in the construction. Like, you just, when you are hearing and listening to things that are really trying to play upon your fears, you just got to sit back and think, like, is that logical? Like, is somebody trying to like manipulate me? Is this like a political game, or is like, is this actually reality?
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like it all kind of comes to what your research is trying to bring a full picture of.
Yeah.
And kind of what we're trying to get people to see is that all of these things are uniquely tied together, right?
Right. And I'll say we don't study this history. Like, this history is not taught in your everyday textbook in American history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As an adult, you're having to learn or even look for this yourself, and a lot of white people don't. And I think that's how these systems stay in place, because once you find out about it, you're angry, but the average white person doesn't know about it because we don't talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know. And I think also people think, well, why does history matter? You know, they're like, well, why do I care about what happened to people in prison in the 60s and 70s, right? And it's like, well, you should care, because there's so many parallels to the contemporary. Because you think about how in the contemporary, various media sources will, and even certain government factions, vilify contemporary movements like Black Lives Matter, right? And in my opinion, it's the exact same thing that I see that is what happened during that era. And it's because of this basic underlying premise that when African Americans, when we try to speak up for ourselves and try to like assert that, yes, we do matter, yes, we are human beings, there's usually a counter to that where it's like, well, doesn't everyone's lives matter? Like, I'm sure you guys know, like, well, everyone's lives matter. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's our point. Everybody's lives matter. Hello, including me.
Yes.
Right?
Because and I'll tell you what you do, I do not envy. Because even in listening to some of the things that interviews that you've had and reading some of your work, it's a little sickening. Like, it makes you a little nauseous. But I think for people that are listening, it's like you have some negative stereotypes that have been embedded into you based off of these things. So when we say, well, Black people don't read, well, you know what? They were like targeting, like literally the FBI was targeting Black bookstores to tear them down. Like, oh, we need a spokesperson, but literally the FBI was targeting anybody that stood up and said, hey, this is not right. So when we kind of look like and when we look at the other side, and it's like, I find that what I see from certain factions of white people is that like Black people don't care, that we want to be in hoods, that we all of these things, all of these stereotypes that you have are rooted in a truth that was created by a system.
Yeah.
Right? And now we take this system that created all these truths about criminalizing Black skin, and then we walk these whole bunch of Black folks to prison, which is where your work comes in. So now that we got all these Black folks, it's criminal to be Black, we're going to create this narrative, and now we put them in prison. So how does the government transition from taking what they consider radical Black folks, I think it's the BMI Black, what am I saying, BMI, I know, but saying Black extremists, and putting them in the prison system for either trying to do good for their community. What ways do you start to see over time that, back then and now, that the prison system even morphed what was going on in society, present day, and then into something even bigger, which is your area of study?
Do you mean sort of like how the prison system changed the movement, or like what are the steps that the government takes when they criminalize black people?
Yeah, would you agree? The steps that they take to criminalize them and what that looks like.
Well, the first thing that you have to do is like if you want to construct a threat, the first thing you have to start off with is essentially what you would call in sociology a social problem. And there's so I'll break it down. So there's different types of social problems, right? There's some that are inherent, and that could be something like a hurricane. We all agree that like factually hurricanes are very scary. And as you all know recently, right, they're very scary, very dangerous, and cause a lot of casualties. They can. And then on the other hand, you have social problems that are constructed. And by that, I mean something like climate change. It's something where people on one hand are arguing, well, it's a fact. Like climate change is like a hurricane. It's a fact. And you have people on the other end that are like, no, it's a political tool. It is not real, right? So you have some problems that you can debate and others you can't, is all I'm saying. And when you have a problem that's debatable, that's what the state uses when it targets specific groups. Is it develops a story where you could debate it, but they will promote so much compelling evidence that to the average person, it's like, it's not even debatable. Like, yeah, blacks are criminals. Like, look at all these mugshots. They're all black people. Look at all these people I see, on the news committing crimes. Like, it's just going about creating an issue and using the evidence at your will to make it so that your point of view becomes naturalized. Almost like African Americans being criminals is as synonymous as saying a hurricane is dangerous. That's the goal.
And when did that start? Has that been around since the 1800s? What year?
I think being someone who is deeply embedded in historical context, I think you can take it all the way back to the colonial era. That's where it started, because it starts if you even look at some of the writings when Europeans are first coming into contact with various African nations. There's a very famous European writer, and I should have written down his name. I would have been able to think of it, but it's just coming to me now, and I can find it for you later. He basically wrote in his journal, he said that these nations are so advanced, they are so drawn together with their strong culture, with their strong norms and society, that we are not going to be able to attack them head on. Because at this time they were like, there's no way we can just defeat them. So what we're going to have to do is make them think that everything that is European is better than what they have, in so many words. And he's writing this very plainly to Parliament. I believe it was in England, saying that we need to essentially colonize their minds. And if we can colonize their minds by promoting whiteness as, the ideal, then we will be able to divide and conquer them.
Wow.
And when people hear that, they're like, that is not real. And I'm like, I am telling you 100%, I'm not lying. Like, this is...
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my reaction. I believe you, of course. But it's just like such a crazy truth bomb to hear. What do you think keeps that in place, though? You know what I mean? That mindset. Because, why, can you speak to that? Like, why all of it, why are we still dealing with this in 2018?
We're still dealing with this because, in my opinion, like I said, because it traces back to colonialism. It's like almost 600 years of baggage, where we learn in sociology that people are socialized, and that essentially means in your day-to-day interactions, starting from birth, you learn through interaction with other people, your parents, what is right. We could all say, as people say, I learned to be racist from my family. That's like what I learned, right? And so the struggle with it is that if that's what socialization means, imagine, that socialization over time for generations, over the course of 500, 600 years. And so what you have to do is you have to use almost a revolutionary way of approaching it, which means just in my opinion, trying to reform people's minds is very difficult. You have to just present them like these are like the concrete facts. That's the only way I've ever been able to get through to someone who, in my opinion, is like very racist. I just like will sit down and like point out factual things. Like I will say, for instance, African Americans and whites may use drugs at about the same rates. However, African Americans go to prison at this much higher rate. And they'll say, well, yeah, but doesn't that indicate that they're using drugs more? And I'll say, no. See this research right here, I can show you that shows that we are actually policed more. So if we have more police in our communities, then we will go to jail more. That doesn't mean that on a factual basis that we're actually doing it more. And then they'll be like, oh, that makes sense. So if there's more cops in my neighborhood, I probably would get stopped more if I, was smoking a blunt. It's like, yeah. Right? Right. And they're like, okay. So I just feel like you have to approach it head on with facts. Otherwise, people are like, it's still debatable to them, right? They're like, we can debate this.
And the point that I want to make to that, so then there's the racist, and then there's just the people, and I get this through the work that I do, and it's kind of sound awful, but like, what things are equal? You heard me say this all the time. I get pushback all the time. Like, why are you even doing this? Like, we had a black president. That's really ignorant, you know what I mean? But you still have to walk people to how this, you know what I mean? I'm constantly having to walk people to how this matters. And so I guess that I answered my own question. You helped me answer it as to why it's still happening. Because I think there's two, that you have racists and then you have people that just think that the status is equal.
We're good to go. We're good to go. We're in a great place.
Because I've been told that quite literally.
Yeah, the colorblind myth is so, yes, it's so dangerous.
Era, people will say we're post-racial.
Look at your face. Look at her face. She's
yeah. Like, right.
Oh my gosh, I have to fix my face too. And I like when people say things like that.
I mean,
and
it's disgusting, and it's a white person doing the work. You constantly come across this. Constantly, I would say. I'm from Ohio, and so we live very different lives, and so what we see in the media is we saw a black president. We saw, so my family is like, a lot of people, not just my family, but like, what's the issue? What's the problem? And I'm like, where do I start?
See, the thing is so my husband, I think I told you all, like he's technically white, but he's like, I don't even know if I should say it.
Brilliant, Jewish, and what?
He's Puerto Rican, Jewish, and Italian. And so he identifies as white, but like white Latino. That's what he identifies as. And so he and I will have these conversations because he will say to me, like, can you just explain it to me, like, from based on your experience? Because I may or may not get it, and I'll say, okay, well, has there ever been a time where you felt out of place because you were the only white person in the room? And like, people may or may not have said things to you that could have been considered as rude. And he's been like the butt of, like the white boy joke or whatever. And I was like, well, how did that make you feel? And he said, well, I did feel a little self-conscious, and I felt, uncomfortable, and it made me sad. And I said, well, imagine if that was your day today, like every day, you are always the only person in the room. Every day you are always potentially the butt of the joke, or you are feeling insecure about your place. And like, how would that affect your psyche? How would that affect your self-worth? How would that affect how you interact? And he was like, I see what you mean. I guess I don't know what it would, I think I'd be sad if that was my everyday. And I said, well, yeah, that's how you just have to, I told him, I was like, you just have to imagine, like, what if it was me in that context? And it's not to say that he's like he's not saying that he's uncomfortable in a group of people of color. He's just saying that there's been times where he has been, like I said, the butt of the joke or whatever. And I told him, I was like, but that was like once for you, right? Once or twice. That didn't happen every time. But like for me, I'm always the only woman of color usually. And I've been the butt of so many jokes, I can't even tell you. It's not once or twice.
Yeah, girl. And speaking of your family, I feel like you're, I love that you say I have to stick to facts because you're a show me state girl.
Yes.
Yes. She's like, show me the facts.
Show me the facts. Yes, I am from Missouri, and I am from Missouri.
From Missouri. And so how did all of this play into like your upbringing? How did it play into getting into sociology? Like there had to be a journey to walking towards coming into this study, which we're gonna get deep into what you study. But how did that happen for you, Missouri girl?
Oh my gosh. So you know what? I love my family, right? And you know, there's a but.
Yeah,
I love my family. But I would say my family is very representative of sort of the divide you see between African Americans that are middle class and African Americans that are lower or working class, right? So I noticed this at a very young age. I would say that myself and my siblings grew up very middle or arguably upper middle class. And so did some of my other cousins. And I realized the correlation was that all of our parents had went to college. All of our parents went to HBCUs together, and they all, you know, graduated and got jobs. And this was in the 70s. So they were part of that first wave, that like the big wave, because there, you know, African Americans had been going to college, but at much lower rates, right? So I realized this, and I also realized, okay, so what's happening with my cousins that, you know, their parents didn't go to college. Their parents stayed in the communities where my parents grew up. Many of them, you know, are still struggling to this day, struggling a lot. A lot of my cousins have been to prison. A lot of my cousins are have or may not still be involved in gangs. Just a lot of various social issues that I noticed as early as like elementary school when we go visit. I just noticed because it's very, very distinct, right? I grew up in like a mostly white neighborhood, going to white schools where I was like, my sister and I were like the only Black people there. And then when we go visit our families, it's very different. It's like an entirely like, you know, Black community, but it's usually a lower income Black community or working class. And there's just so many things that we noticed that were different. And that's why I became interested in sociology, is I wanted to understand, why is there this huge divide, and how come the majority of my family is in this predicament, and then a very small subset of us are, you know, in a completely different arena, right? It's just I understand why now. Why, you know, I have my PhD very soon versus one of my cousins is just finished serving a life sentence, right? So yeah, it's personal to me.
Yeah. Hey, with you, 100%. And I think it speaks to how education in people's lives can completely change their trajectory. You know what I mean? Like how, like, we forget that, we miss that, and we sometimes don't understand the deprivation of a quality of education of a certain group of people, and how that changes the course of their family life, and why some folks are still, like you said, stuck.
And that was a system that was created going back to what we said in the 1800s, but then moving forward. Is that I think we left off in the 40s and the 50s. So what was going on then in the world of incarceration of Black people, or just sociologically for Black people?
Well, the thing is that, so, you know, if you're familiar with the idea of the chain gang, at least in the U.S., I mean, that traces back all the way. It traces back to slavery and indentured servants who, you know, got into trouble, for instance. Who,
with the chain gang,
I don't know what it is.
That's the sound of the man working on the chain. Yeah, in it. Let's talk about the chain gang. What that mean?
Okay. Well, I love Sam Cooke.
Oh, what it is?
Yeah. What is the chain gang?
So the chain gang. So going back to slavery, you would see slaves chained up by their ankles working in the fields, and then slaves who got into trouble would be lined up in chains as well, even chains around their neck, around their wrists and waists, and just working in those conditions. And you also see that continue on in the prison system. And so and what most people don't realize is, as we talk about mass incarceration is occurring in the late 70s. So most people don't realize that as early as 1960, African Americans in the U.S. were 5 times more likely to be in prison in 1960. So it goes all the way back to that time period when African Americans are first in droves standing up for their rights.
Wow.
And so yeah, I guess it's just, you see a lot of, that's why I love Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, because before her book, sociologists and historians and political scientists said a lot of the same things that she said in the book. But the thing that makes her book stand out is that she just did a really great job of bringing together the connection between slavery and the modern prison boom, right? And she does a great job of doing that through narratives of people's lives, right? Where I think she starts off the book where one of the people she interviewed, his great-great-great-grandfather was a slave. After that, only a couple generations later, like, that grandfather's in prison, he's in prison, and it's just sort of a continuation. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I'm getting in my feelings about it.
Yeah, no, because I think it's important to tell that story to people. We have this conversation, they don't necessarily sometimes connect to facts, and it's like, you have to take a look at we call them generational curses, but it's not a curse when somebody made it, like created a situation. You know what I mean? The generational effect that that racism and white supremacy has had on everybody's lives. So even talking about the man who his great-great-great-grandfather was a slave, and then there's prison, and then there's more prison, and then there's maybe a break and more prison, and then going to the other side and saying, well, there's this small investment, then there's going to the military and getting the VA loan. And then there's this house that gets passed on to you, then you can be given a car, and then you can, that has really created this disparity between where we are and where we want to be and where we could actually go culturally between, we're talking now blacks and whites, but between whites and non-whites, yes. That's important to understand. It all goes together. Yeah. And the prison system is an important key to furthering that disparity. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, it's become, I would say, almost the main institution of division in American society. And even speaking to facts, as you were saying earlier, I heard my whole life growing up from people in my community. As I said, my neighborhood was mostly white, and people would say, I just don't understand, like, you guys are like the good black people, but I don't understand why the rest of, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. They're like, you guys are the good blacks, basically. Like, we don't understand why the rest of you all can't just, like, get it together. And I was like a little kid, right? And I'm like, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure it out. Because you even hear it in your own community. I've heard even some of my cousins be like, oh, I can't stand going to see, like, that side of our family. And it's sad, right? Because you internalize it. You internalize this individualism, that it's all down to individual responsibility, and it has nothing to do with social conditions at all. That's what we internalize. But I mean, thinking about factually, like even looking at our generation in terms of differences, we could think about our grandparents, right? Many of our grandparents are baby boomers. During that era, many African Americans served in World War II, but when we came back, we didn't benefit from all the benefits that white World War II veterans received. And that is arguably one of the reasons why the baby boomer generation was able to accumulate so much wealth, right? So much more wealth than we will ever in our generation. We didn't have access to the education subsidies. We didn't get any of the first-rate loans. We didn't get any of the homes that they built for veterans. We were just sent right back to the hood. And actually, many of us were, if you're in the South, many people were lynched for wearing their uniform when they came back from World War II, because it was seen, it was seen as a sign of, like, you getting too big for your britches, like you're still an N-word. So don't be wearing that uniform, like it means.
But then they serve. I forgive my ignorance. It's just so hard to wrap your head around this stuff, because I don't even know how I can't. Like, it's just, okay, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. There's a case that came out in the New York Times recently about how records, the Justice Department is trying to suppress the release of these records from a 1946 lynching of two African-American couples. One of the men was a veteran, and it's argued, the NAACP is arguing that's one of the reasons that they were lynched, is because he was like, he returned and he was wearing his uniform and he was like seen as a threat. And yeah, I mean, it's something that, like you said, and like we're talking about, like you have to present people with facts, because when someone hears that, if they still don't even want to entertain the reality that it's not all boiling down to your individual effort, right, as to where you are in life. If people don't want to talk about facts, it's sometimes just really hard for me to make time for them.
Right. No, they're absolutely.
I would have figured, like you talk a lot about emotional fatigue, about having to have a very good spirit of discernment of what conversations are healthy and what conversations are not.
Yeah, like when is someone truly trying to learn versus, you know, there's a difference between asking ignorant questions and then just trying and not having an open mind. You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of, I know a lot of white people just come from ignorance, you know, and there's been a lot of marketing of African Americans as bad. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you know in the inner city, it's just, I was raised, it was dangerous to go downtown. You know what I mean? And that was code. That was code. You know, but I didn't know that until I got to be 28, 29 years old, you know, but those were systems in place that were marketing Black people that way. And if Black people are being, you know, disproportionately incarcerated more, then that just feeds back into the narrative, you know, that Black people are dangerous. That's what, do you see what I'm trying to say?
That's what she was saying about the policing. Go ahead.
Right.
That's when I hear that, it makes me laugh, because I'm like, well, for a lot of Black people, we think that white people are dangerous, because if we go to your neighborhood, we might get shot by the police.
Or pulled over.
Exactly. That's why it's like, oh, so my neighborhood's dangerous. Okay, well, I don't want to get stopped and frisked in your neighborhood. So.
Right. And then it keeps us apart.
And when you kind of think about, I'm thinking about I'm sorry, but I like have the image of somebody in their uniform hanging. Like it is kind of, it's upsetting, and it's frustrating, I guess, as a Black person. For me, period. It's frustrating because it's almost like there's nothing that we could do.
Right.
There's nothing, when you've got J. Edgar Hoover saying that if there's a Black Messiah, you know, some people hear Messiah and they think a savior, right? Somebody who's coming, but his idea of a Black Messiah was anybody who was telling Black folks, you can do and be better. And here's how we do it. That even that was criminal. Do you know what I mean? Like that idea is, I don't know. And you're talking about cut, like it's like you want to, for me, I want to go back to some of my cousins who are still with the shit. That's pretty much what they say. And like pull them up out of it, but you can't. But you can't, because just as white folks were conditioned one way, they are so deep into conditioning that there's no way out. Because even like you were saying in neighborhoods, I grew up where even the drug dealers were like, don't mess with her because she's going somewhere. So even like that was them telling themselves that they were less than, and that allowing me to be saved from the bullshit was saving a community that I know I can't. One person can't save. You can't save, you know, and that sucks. And that too is like the Black Messiah. Like I'm not a Messiah for the people where I came from, but I want to help. But even that could be considered something. Even now with the Black identity extremists, if you Black Lives Matter stuff, I could still be considered dangerous and be put on a watch list for trying to rise up in a sense. It's nuck and futz, right?
It's true.
No. But what I want to get your perspective on, as a sociologist, where does racism start? Is it from parents? Is it from youth? And then what keeps it in place? You know, what keeps these systems in place? Like it's so hard to understand.
Almost more action items to get the system away.
Yeah.
Well, there's really great research in sociology and psychology that talks about how it starts as early as with babies. So research shows that small children usually, like, and when I say small, I'm talking about like my daughter's age, like 8 months, 9 months, they do tend to prefer people who look like their parents.
Okay.
But that could be technically racialized, but it's not, if you know what I mean. It's more like, oh, that person kind of favors my mom, so they might smile at certain people and not smile at other people. But by the time they get to be 2, they actually do start noticing racial difference, because at that age they start noticing that certain people are treated one way and certain people are treated another. And so even at the earliest age of 2, children notice through interactions, and that can be with parents, with other parents, in public. They could observe how their parents are treated. They could observe how other children are being treated by like a preschool teacher. They learn as early as age 2 that, people of a certain skin tone are treated better, and people of this other skin tone are treated less than. So I need to try to be like these other people, because that's what's considered good. And as children, little children, they want to be perceived as good. They want approval from adults. They want approval from their peers. And it's very disheartening, because that research just affirms what many of us as African Americans already know in our heart, because you can think about your own childhood and remember being a small child, wanting approval, and at times feeling that you were less than, but you didn't really know why, right? Like, you didn't know why you felt like that. And so in my opinion, I think it starts at those young ages, and it starts from being in social situations, in day-to-day social situations. And it can be at the grocery store. You notice that, like, the cashier might treat your mom a certain way, or your mom might be getting followed around the store. And little kids notice these things, and these researchers have proved that they notice them. And then I think the same study showed that even as early as kindergarten, children will prefer to have friends of certain races based off of their own interactions and experiences. Yes. And it tends to be that children will prefer to have white friends. And yeah. So it starts very young, and I knew this, but
it almost sounds like we need more diverse cultures, and growing up more diverse would be healthier for everyone, right? For society.
Exactly. Follow-up studies, they showed concrete ways that we can make it better. Yeah. So follow-up studies show that if you introduce children into diverse situations where they're around a multitude of adults of different backgrounds, and children, especially being around children of other backgrounds, it significantly lowered the likelihood that they would have a strong preference for whiteness as a child. And so I think that's why people think, diversity is just a sham. And it's like, no, this is proving that this is like one way that you can intervene early. You can try to change the mindset really young.
So it means you go into each other's neighborhoods, right?
Your neighborhood.
Sorry,
you should.
I had to.
Your neighborhood.
That gets to the heart of the podcast,
right,
of what we're trying to say and do. Yeah.
That makes so much
sense. So now
sense.
We have a sociologist telling
you, go get your kid, erase the hate, play dates.
Yep.
Do some dinner, do something.
Yeah.
Be very intentional about what you do and who you do in your village around your little citizens. Absolutely.
Exactly. That's exactly what the authors of the study about children that were 2 and 3, they ended their study by saying that they are proving that children are never too young to talk about race. They're never too young to talk about these types of issues. And if you don't talk about them, that's when you're actually letting society make up your child's mind,
right? And so
versus you.
So I'm reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and she said, and every white family has gone through this, where we grew up predominantly white, and then you were introduced to a black person at a young age, and there's a woman who was in the grocery store, and her son just says, oh, look, there's someone that's darker, or a black person, and the mom goes, shh, don't say that. Don't acknowledge the race, because as if it's inherently bad to be black. And I was like, oh my God, all of us have done that. Because we're teaching the children from a very young age that it's wrong to see race. and it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's not. And so she was saying that the better way to do that is just say, yeah, there's people of all different colors. You know what I mean? Like, that person is black, you are white. But a lot of the times what we do is tell our children, no, don't point out that they're black. No, that's bad. And then it's reinforcing the idea that being a person of color is wrong, shameful, or bad, or that we shouldn't acknowledge or talk about race.
Exactly.
I've had that experience, and I know so many of my friends have. And so you're absolutely right. It starts young.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's with, I think, in my personal opinion, I think what they're showing is that with children of color, you have to make sure that they see themselves in everything around them. And that can be from their toys, that can be from their books, their cartoons. You have to make sure they see themselves so that they know that, no, you matter too, and you are, like, just because everything on the outside may seem as though you're an other, you're not. And I think that means for young white children that parents have to be very deliberate about also making sure that they see other colors, other cultures in their day-to-day as well. That means that all of your nursery rhyme books can't just be like your stereotypically European-looking children, right? That you're not making sure that their movies and their cartoons, their dolls, like each basically white parents need to diversify. Parents of color need to, like, blacken and brown it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So if you're saying, what you're saying is, if I have a parenting portfolio, we want white people to diversify their portfolio, and we want black folks to get more of yourself inside of your portfolio.
That's how it's
be deliberate
for everybody moving forward, is what it sounds like.
Do you know how hard it is to find a black dentist? Okay,
You said that before.
Not even black.
Because usually they're old white men, right?
Listen, I've been trying to find a black dentist for about a year now. I found my black orthodontist for my son. She's amazing, UConn graduate, like, did all this homework on her. But I cannot find a black dentist to save my life. I'm serious. But that's part of my being intentional of, like, making sure that there are professional folks in my kids' lives that,
And that's why I love this conversation with you, because you're really bringing the facts to the things that we talk about. You know what I mean? Because we try to say this stuff all the time, but you're really bringing it home as to why diversity truly matters and how diversity plays a role in creating equity for everyone, for people of color.
Exactly.
And a prison and in a system.
Yes.
Like, in a whole daggum, whole daggum institution.
And I would hope, my hope is, I don't have children yet, but as I move forward and hopefully do someday, is that they will start further along than I did, because I'm 30 and now doing this work. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know a lot of it, and I know that most of my friends and family don't either. And it's not by choice that we didn't want to. It's just that that's white privilege.
Yeah, and I think too, just one of the things, I think what you all are doing is so great for that reason, because it's never too late to start. I know that
I love that.
we're just talking about how we should try to intervene with children, but if we think that it's too late, then we'll never do anything, right?
I love that. Yes.
It's never too late to start to creating what I would consider better human beings, what I would say creating better communities, and really viewing everyone as being a part of our community. We're all one community, and it's hard to do that if we think that it's too late.
Yes, I love that, because I think so often people like to give up on older generations. We have a woman that was in her 60s and has just come to our events and listened to the podcast and said, I feel like I was in a dark room and now I'm walking into the light.
And it's bright as hell.
But it's great though, because she will have grandchildren, you know what I mean? And she will, even my grandmother's starting to come into this conversation slowly but surely. And like, I had no idea. She just didn't know, because she grew up in rural Pennsylvania and then moved to Cleveland, Ohio. So never interacted with people of color, and didn't even know that she should seek out diverse experiences. Not because she's a bad person, it wasn't in her worldview.
Yeah, and it's even with like being an African American, I feel like we have to also look at ourselves, our own community, and our own conditioning about what I would say is like the belief that white is right.
Right.
You know what I mean? We have to be really focused on that because I can look at my own family, and I've heard people in my family say, oh my gosh, like, you know, because my hair texture is curly, right? It's like, it's not as tightly wound. So they'll say, oh, you know, I love your hair. You have such good hair. I think, you know, oh, I can't wear my natural. I have to get it. And I'm like, no, like, this is it just makes me so sad, you know? And it's something that I just need to also tell myself it's never too late to explain something to someone and to try to make a difference, because in those situations, sometimes I just shut down, and I, even with my own family, because I just think, you know, but I was just going to say, I can't give up as well on my own.
It is so funny because when you look at, I think I saw a post recently on somebody's Twitter that was like, you know, maybe it was yours, the whole Black pride equals gangster, Hispanic pride equals, Islamic pride equals terrorists. And it's almost like outwardly, as a Black person, you have this, yeah, I'm Black and I'm proud. But then when you walk into your home, it's almost like, oh, I'm trying to assimilate. You know what I mean? Like, and when I look, you know what I mean? That it's kind of a weird dichotomy of like, I'm so proud, I'm so proud, but I don't want to do too much Black. Or I don't want to be too, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh no, I know exactly what you mean. I think about that too, even with my own like body issues, that I feel proud to say that I'm like overcoming. I really feel strongly that I've like overcome a lot of that. But like growing up, I always felt so self-conscious because I, you know, was in like a mostly white neighborhood, and people were like, oh, you're fat, or you have too much curve, or you have this and that. And like growing up and you know, coming to learning more about history and sociology, I first came upon like the story of Sarah Bartman. Are you all familiar with her, right? Yeah, so she, you know, she essentially, I believe she was a slave that was taken throughout Europe, like a circus animal, if you will, in the 1800s, because she had a large behind and wide hips, and people would come and look at her and like gawk and say, oh, look at her body and how deformed. And I realized that like that's sort of the origins of my disgust for my natural curve. It comes from that being ingrained, that like having that type of body is like, it's gross, or it's sexual, or you know what I mean? And I just think, when I think of the ways that my mind is colonized, it really hits home for me, because I have daughters too, and when I'm thinking about beauty and what's considered acceptable and what's considered, you know, appropriate, it has a lot to do with that.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And we've all been colonized then. Like our mindset, white people, and I mean, all, you know, and that's, so it's like a ton of unlearning. But this is why I love doing this podcast too, because white people don't even know they got stuff to unlearn.
That is true. That is very true, because you hear white people say, oh, my hair, I hate my hair, it's wavy and it gets all frizzy, and I'm like, no, your beautiful like curls they're gorgeous. You don't have to straighten it. You know, it's the same
Right.
It's the thing. It manifests in a different way, and I think that the level of pain it causes is different, but it definitely manifests across the board.
I mean, it's interesting, even just looking back at high school for me, we wanted to be anorexically thin. Like that was the ideal, was just, I'm petite, and I was always like 100, I want to be 100 pounds, you know, and I still have to fight that, because larger, for whatever reason, is
not good,
curvy, or whatever you want to call
until
it.
my anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hun.
You see what I have
But
all
please
the
don't
time?
use that butt.
Exactly.
Right, you know, like, I don't know.
No, but you're right.
For whatever it's worth, unfortunately, it did take American people to make our body acceptable mainstream, right? It took, I can't remember to say, oh, big butts are good. J-Lo too, because J-Lo too, that it was like, oh, she got a big butt. Look at, you know, like it took someone that was
She was
not
aspirational.
Yeah, that did not have that dark skin, even though she was of color. She's still in Black, you know.
Exactly. There's plenty of Afro Latinas who've had, you know, a much bigger or the same behind, in the public eye, nobody cared until it was a light-skinned Puerto Rican woman.
So it's that we're going into a whole nother thing. Like, but still, yes.
No, but it also goes back to it's the color of your skin. The darker is always better, and it's worse. And then it plays into everything. Our looks, the prisons, all of it.
Yeah, when you're thinking about racism and how it manifests, whether it's through criminal justice, whether it's through our beauty ideals, or our family interactions, it all comes back to the construction that we're talking about. So it's all related. It's really, yeah, you hear people say you need to free your mind. That's what they were saying, with the
follow. Don't be so, yes, free your mind. Who sings that? Did Whitney sing that?
It's in my head. I'm like, free your mind.
Follow.
She sings to me all the time.
Girl, I'm Googling it right now. I don't care, because I'm singing these songs. You knew Sir Mix-a-Lot. You knew him. Free your mind. Watch.
Gosh, she's gonna play for us.
And I don't even know if how much, are we taking up too much of your time?
Yes, let us know. Because we just talk. I mean, this is so the interview will go, it's not even an interview, it just goes like a conversation.
Oh, I was bogusly wrong. It was in Vogue.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Free your mind.
I love that. Free your mind. Okay.
Can that should be the cue in.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I've done this before. Yes, you know. Okay, so yeah, we're going to cue that in. Listen to this right here. Told you it was a song. I told you.
Oh, I believe you. I've never heard it.
But I think, like I said, I feel like we've taken a lot from you. But me and Christine were talking about this, is that we feel like you're like a 2-part series.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No, seriously.
It's so flattering. I don't mind. You guys are so much fun, though. I'll come back to the neighborhood.
Yeah, because we really do want to dive into what it means in the actual system, because I think what we unpack today is just the effects of criminalizing skin.
Yes.
Right, and what that means and what we can do and things like that. But then it's, once we've criminalized the skin, all this is happened. What does it look behind bars?
Yes.
Which is like all that you do, right? And then once
we want to dive into that deep and what that lived experience behind bars for people of color looks like, but we can't really dive into that until we take our listeners, because we talked about this before, a lot of our listeners are white women, but the average white woman doesn't know this stuff as deep as obviously as you do, so we kind of wanted to do one part and then another.
Put the pieces together. Will
Yeah.
you be our puzzle?
I will be your puzzle.
Oh my God. We're gonna be friends.
Look, I want to ask you, how is Miss Shelby?
Miss Shelby. Wait.
Who's Miss Shelby? Tell everybody about it.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Shelby. The story of Shelby is actually, it's funny because I feel like she's living her best life right now, but it's sad too. So basically what happened to Shelby is, like, a couple of years ago, my husband, he doesn't like to listen to me. He's very stubborn, and I've accepted that part of him. But he had Shelby on our porch, and I said, Shelby needs to be like in something with a cover because she will escape. She's an escape artist. There's many times where I have found Shelby, as you may have seen on my Instagram, free in the house or like in a corner hiding because our dog would have cornered her, and he's basically kind of a snitch, right? Because he was like barking like she's scared, and Shelby's like, "F you, you told on me." So basically, my husband was like, "No, she's good. I was like, okay. So Shelby is on the porch. They are out there for like 30 minutes. I look outside the window. She's not in the box. I see that she's just not in the box. So I run down the stairs, run outside, and I was like, "Where is Shelby?" And like I was like, "Where is Shelby?" Because we had Shelby since she was a little baby, and I was like, "That's my turtle. Where is she?" And then he was like, "What are you talking about? Where's Shelby?" And he looked in the box and he was like, "She was right here." And then he starts canvassing the porch. And at this time, we lived right next to a forest preserve. So then I was like, I looked into the forest and I said, "Shelby's gone." Shelby literally is gone. She escaped. She was like, "Sayonara, I finally did it, y'all, and I'm out."
I've been crying.
She said, "Peace, bitches, I'm out."
Oh my God.
So it's funny, but it's sad because we did raise her from like she was like this big when we got her in New York City. So like, but she was like, she had been trying to escape for like a year. she made it, and she didn't just make it out of the house, she made it into the forest. And it rained that day.
Living her best life.
Living my best life. Ain't got time with you. I'm living my best life.
I'm telling you.
That's Shelby. Hey,
Like,
Shelby, if you're out there, I'm glad to see that you were persistent.
Yes.
As we do want people to be persistent about creating change. You saw what you wanted and you went out there and got it.
Good. Wow, way to bring that home.
You went out there and you got it. You were intentional. Put me on the porch. I'm cool.
it was funny, and she was so smart and sneaky about it too. He said that when you put her in the box, she just sat in one corner, and she sat like that for a good 15 minutes. I said, yeah, because she was just letting you think that she was just sitting there chilling. As soon as you turn your back, started grilling, she was like, I gotta go right now. It's my chance. So, and the funny thing is my dog was barking, and I think he probably was snitching. He was snitching, but this time he was behind the glass door, and so Shelby was probably like into the forest, finger in the air, peace.
Oh
Don't care.
God.
So when we finish up, that is a beautiful story. I'm glad. So this is hard stuff, so then we don't want to leave on a gloom and gloom. But we do what's called so what, now what, right? And with so what, now what, it's like, okay, so what? We talked about this stuff. Now what? So if you could lead the way, or you want one of us to lead the way with the so what, now what? What are you feeling?
Well, I think today what we've covered, the so what, I think we've sort of unpacked the fact that change is possible, and I think that that's a prolific so what. We've unpacked the lie that it's too late, and that you actually can make a difference right now, no matter what a person's age is. You can make obviously the biggest impact if you start with children, but that's what I would have thought until we talked. Because what you just proved is that woman who said she's coming into the light, I mean, that's a foundational transformation, right? I mean, and I would have never thought something like that. And so I think that that's the so what. It's not too late.
Right. And that's a now what as well.
That is a now what, too. Yeah. So what? It's not too late. Now what? Get to it.
Yeah. I would say my so what, now what is so what, like we had this conversation and it's important to keep having it. And then now what is the diversity piece? Because I know that we have mothers that listen, right? So I love, that's like very actionable to me, is like making sure your children aren't just around all white children, or aren't just partaking in all white books and white media. Because diversity, and she gave us the facts and, the figures of diversity really matters in creating a more equitable society going forward, and making sure that my kids and your kids' generation have it do better.
Exactly.
So I guess my so what is so what, I have my feelings about things, right? Because it's really personal in a sense for me. And that those things are valid just based off of a lot of things that we've talked about. And that so what, history is real. But now what, it really, for me, always goes back to the one things that we can do. Right? That whole, this journey of changing the stuff about me so that changes the world, quote, in a sense. So my now what is, I'm going to continue looking for a Black dentist. Okay?
There you go.
But I'm also going to challenge other people, no matter what your cultural background is to what is your one thing that you can do now what one thing can you do in your world that changes that world with regards to race relations and things like that. So whether that's picking up a book of Big Hair Don't Care, or I'm like just throwing some even Snow Day. Snow Day's got a Black character in it too.
I love
and
Snow
it's
Day.
A classic. You know
Yeah, I never thought about that.
But even picking up and doing the little things that they all matter. But one thing is where you start. Nothing is too small.
Yes, I love that.
And history, y'all, and history.
Yes.
Facts. Curly Professor said
she brought them. She brought us.
So give us all of your handles. If people are like, oh my God, this girl's amazing. If they're like us, like where can they find you? And then can you recommend a book?
Oh yeah.
Do a record. So tell us all your handles and your current book recommendation.
So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm new to Twitter. I just joined in September, but I'm really finding that Twitter is kind of like the academic, like LinkedIn. Like academics don't care about LinkedIn, but we're all over Twitter, engaged, sharing each other's research, debating. I was like, I should have got on here sooner. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I've been on Instagram for a while, both at Curly Professor. So, and I could tell you a little bit about what I'm reading right now.
Yes, please.
Yes, so right now I'm really into this book called The Pursuit of Happiness. And it's basically about African American women who are disillusioned with their romantic opportunities in the U.S. and which is just like so fascinating, right? And how they actually engage in what's considered emotional transnationalism. And it's really that you're forming these emotional ties to what could be in other parts of the world. And so they travel to different areas in the African diaspora, looking for love.
Wow,
so
that sounds really good. Emotional transnationalism.
Girl, let me just tell you, I'm about to go to Audible right now.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it is.
Because I could understand that.
Yeah.
Like romanticizing the diaspora to find love. Is that what girl?
What's the diaspora? I'm familiar with that word.
What'd you say?
I want to know what diaspora is.
Yeah, what is it?
The whole collective of Professor.
Yes, diaspora is, sorry, I was looking up, there's some really good reviews of the book, but the diaspora is basically just making it plain. It's where in the world there's Black people as a result of us either migrating or being usually forcibly removed and put somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
That we're all a part of it. It doesn't matter if you're, I feel like it's that word that says all y'all Negroes are connected. You know what I mean? Seriously,
yeah.
It really is from the music to the we're all part of the diaspora.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm always learning.
Yeah. Girl.
Well, thank you, Brittany. You were awesome, per
Yes.
usual.
We have, listen.
You guys are bomb.
Christina's going to get with you, but we have to get into your work.
Yeah.
We have to dive into that. That is an important piece.
We will. And I think next time I will I have some really fantastic quotes because I also would like for the men to speak for themselves,
Yes.
So I have some really great quotes because I've done a lot of interviews with Black political activists who were incarcerated for a long time. But I do have interviews with white prisoners who were incarcerated for a long time. One of them is he was a former member of the Aryan Nation.
Wow.
And Aryan Warriors, Aryan Warriors. And so that's also a really interesting contrast because he sort of talks about sort of his journey out of white supremacy once he gets out of prison.
Wow.
And it's very relevant because the Black political activists, as you would imagine, have a lot of battles and arguably wars behind bars with white supremacist prisoners. So,
wow.
Yeah, I will be bringing that.
Bring it in. We'll add it in, whatever you have that you want to play or read. Once we set it up, we'll add it in as you so that you can hear. You have the audio, right? I'm not correct in saying that, or these written down quotes.
I have it written down. I'd have to get their permission to play the audio because their voices, because I write everything anonymously because many of them don't want to be validated or as being a part of a group. But I can send you the quotes ahead of time. So you all can take a look and see what you think.
Oh, I can't wait.
No, we already think you, this is an old phrase, thebomb.com. I'm that's real old. What is that? That's so early 2000.
It is.
You see my old lady dance though? That's how I'm responding.
Everybody needs a little look. What are we talking? We had a guy we were talking about. Everybody needs a little two-step.
You do. It's like you just.
I learned what the two-step was from her.
Little shimmy, yeah. Christina's the one who sets everything up.
Yeah.
She makes stuff happen.
It's a team.
It isn't, but you know, she just trying to validate me. She knows she set everything up. She did. So once she gets us, I'm excited for more conversation.
Yeah, I love
Me
this.
too.
Thank you
Me
so
too. I love you guys. I wish that we lived in the same area.
I know, me too.
Listen, one day when you're all alone, I will something, just thinking of you.
She serenades me like this all the time.
The way you look today.
Did you want to be a singer?
I know.
Okay.
Ended it with a snort.
I do it now, and my husband's like, "You took it from Jackie." I'm like, I think you know, you just pick up things from people that you're around a lot.
She's an empath.
Yeah, I am. Well, thank you, ma'am. I'll reach out to you. And we'll
Okay.
probably 2 weeks.
Either. I mean, it just depends on what we'll talk about it. If you want it to air next week, we can make it air next week. If you want to air it the week after.
Yeah.
What do we talk? Yeah, we'll talk about it.
We'll
let you know.
Yeah.
Definitely let you know.
Okay. Cool. Thank you guys so much.
We'll make it a great day, as Jackie said.
Yes, make it a great day.
It will be a great day. This has been fun.
Thanks, girl.
Take care.
Bye.
In the meeting.